can't even hear what you're saying right now. I literally cannot hear what you're saying. I'm just nodding because right now my whole body's ready to shut down. This is so hot. My name is Sojo, and I am sitting here with Darian Sanders. I'll introduce him in a second, but first, let me introduce exactly what makes this interview so exciting. We decided to change things up today, okay?
All right.
Now, you do hot food, right?
I do.
Have you seen the show Hot Ones?
I have.
We decided to mimic that.
Come
so we
on.
got some hot sauces here. You'll see them right here in these cups in front of us. We couldn't afford the wings, so we got some chicken nuggets, okay? So that's our little thing. So as I ask questions, we're gonna dip, we're gonna see. Now I'm horrible with all things hot. So maybe the joke's on me here. Apparently you're gonna be fine with this, but we're gonna find out in just a second. If you don't know Darian Sanders, he actually is Simba on Broadway musical. And so I'm excited to be sitting with you because this is a musical that came through Cleveland, Ohio, where I was born and raised years ago. I remember being just completely mesmerized by it on stage. I can only imagine what it's like on Broadway. So before I start asking you a question, let's go ahead and start on level one. I don't know what this one is. It is mild sauce. Something I buy every time I get tacos. I should be able to do this one. So let's start with this.
He's gonna pour it on.
I'm just gonna dab, just put a little dab just on the edge. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Okay. Like ketchup.
Not quite. I was not even in the ballpark. Okay. So, sorry, I'm gonna ask you the first question.
All right.
If you had to choose between the animated Lion King or the CGI Lion King, which one would you say is your favorite?
I have to go old school, OG, animated.
Yeah.
It's just the
Same.
reality, the nostalgia of it.
Yep.
It's just beautiful. Can't top it.
The new CGI one felt incredible. It felt a little slow to me. I don't know why it felt slower. I felt like the old one, maybe it's just because I was younger, but the old one felt faster. But I will say the realism when it came to the cats was just really spectacular.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I've loved cats my entire life. I grew up loving them even before Lion King came out.
That's
I would
surreal.
wake up in the morning and before going to school, watch National Geographic's Big Cat Diary. And I think the new like CGI version of it all just made it come to life even more for me.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, OG is where it's at, but the realistic aspect of it is just
So
great.
when you hear that Lion King is doing auditions, is it something that as soon as you hear, you're thinking like, I can do this, I'm running for this, or this is what I want to do, or are you intimidated about the idea of having to play possibly a cat?
Man, it's actually funny. When the audition came about, I didn't want to do it at all.
You didn't?
So I was in the process of wanting to be in Hamilton and auditioning for Aaron
Oh
Burr.
my gosh.
And my manager asked me to do The Lion King, and I was like, nah, we're good. We're okay.
And so he talks you into it. He or she talks you into
Yeah,
it.
she talked me into it and said, hey, let's send in a video. And that's kind of how it all started.
They call you back. They're like, we're interested. Was it out the gate? You knew it was going to be Simba? You audition, or do you have to go through a couple steps?
No, I auditioned and I was in the ensemble understudying Simba.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's how I started. That's where I got my start in 2019.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, the rest is kind of history because after the pandemic, came back full time as Simba. We started in Cleveland, so let's talk about the nostalgia.
Oh my
of that. Yeah,
gosh.
so just the theater district in Cleveland was amazing, and so it was great to launch it back up there.
Well, there's a lot of performers and leaders who are interested in the arts. When it comes to like your daily routine, what does a morning look like when you're getting out of the bed to really kind of set the gears towards excellence?
Yeah, I would say first off is always water. Just staying hydrated in different climates and seasons that we go through in life, especially traveling around. Always starting out hydrating the body and then grab a protein shake out of the refrigerator and then head straight to the gym. I have a trainer, and so just with what I do and making sure that the body's always staying ready.
Yeah.
About 2 hours in the gym.
Wow.
I love the gym. It's like my happy place where I just kind of can chill and kind of veg out and just do what I do. So I have a plan, I have a program. And then post that, I have the full day completely to do whatever I need to do. So I usually try to go to like a coffee shop, sit and do my quiet time, reading, journaling. Always trying to connect with friends and family, whether they're with me on tour or doing what I'm doing or back home. And so just allowing time and opportunity to do those things.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
Okay, you ready for number two?
All right.
I don't know what number two is. It is hot.
Just hot.
Which
just flat.
Honestly, this first one was a lot for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna put this on the plate more. And that way we can be in a little bit more control.
Come on, control. Not I.
And while I'm doing this, I'm gonna ask you, where do you go for inspiration when it comes for inspiration? What's your sources?
I would say my community, friends and family.
Mm-hmm. Powerful. I like what you said.
Making it happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. It's good.
Mm-hmm.
Just breathe through it. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Just take your time.
Yeah. That's what you do?
Yeah.
That's what you do.
Yeah. Friends, family, community. I love collaborating with other artists.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've realized is the further I've gotten along in the process of artistry and in this business, the more I realized, man, other people just want to collaborate with you. And so a lot of people are like, oh man, this person's doing this or high up on this side, or they've quote unquote made it. And it's like, no, they're just real. And they love to sit and talk and process and whether write or whether walk through your story or their story. It's all a collaboration aspect.
Mm-hmm. So like from auditioning to making it, a lot of people say you made it. When you're around, peers, I mean, are you saying I'm still weaning as much inspiration I was? Does it change once you've made it to a dream role, or would you say it actually the pressure is even stronger, so you end up looking for more inspiration?
No, I would say when after you have gotten the role, I would say the inspiration, a lot of it comes from the crowd and the participants that are coming to the shows that you're doing, especially for me, sitting and making sure and understanding the story that I was telling for 5 years was this iconic story that has been told for over 30 years.
True.
And knowing and understanding, man, when somebody comes to the show, it may be the very first time that they've seen the show, or it may be their very last time they've seen the show. And so we're creating memories. And so the inspiration comes from making sure it's fresh and new every single time, even though I've done it over 2,000.
Oh my God, 2,000 times?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So what's one thing people may assume about you that they're surprised to learn about you when they actually get to know you? Get to know Darian versus Simba. Or the performer.
Well, it's actually funny. I just got done doing a worship tour with some of the crew that I've just grown up and loved. Yeah. And one of the cool things is, as we were sitting there doing sound check, people are asking us to do things, and me and one of my fellow worship leaders, her name's Sarah, we both look at each other like, if people really knew how stupid we were, like how dumb we really are, and all the things. But one of the things that I thoroughly enjoy is pickleball. It's a new love that I...
Okay, did you play sports growing up?
I did. I played sports growing up.
So you're just naturally, I've always been keen to sports and athletics.
Yeah, loved basketball. Was all about that growing up. I had 5 sisters. They all played basketball growing up. So watched that, played it myself, did band. So I did marching band. So like physically running around the field, things like that came easy to me. But when I was doing The Lion King, I tore my meniscus. And after I repaired it, I really wanted to start like playing tennis. And I couldn't play it because of my knee. But pickleball, I could play. And so everyone's like, oh, it's an old man sport. I'm like, it's not an old man sport. Let's talk about it. Even though...
It's on the come up. It's young.
It's
young. You can really carve out a lane there.
Come on
There
now.
might be something to make out of that.
Yeah, I travel with my paddles. So.
Well, I got to ask you, when it came to tearing your meniscus, did it happen in rehearsal? Did it happen on stage?
It happened on stage.
On stage?
It was back in Kentucky. It was the debut that I did for Simba. Back in my hometown, in front of my wife, my boy, my best friend, like friends and family, and tore my meniscus during the show, finished the show. No one knew.
The show.
Yeah, no one knew.
That's real Kobe Bryant of you.
Come on now.
I mean, did you know in the moment when you ripped it,
something was wrong. So I had never torn or sprained anything. And so once I felt it, I was like, something's wrong. So I got off the stage, I was like, wrap it up, got done with the show, and then we just kind of went from there.
Okay, as we're preparing this third one, which is Cholula, popular when you always see this one on tables at restaurants, I'm going to ask you, I love that you just mentioned worship. When it comes to faith and Broadway, a lot of people would assume it's not a place that is very welcoming of your faith. Maybe that's an assumption that's not accurate. So what is it like with having your faith on Broadway?
I will take a bite of this.
First, you tell me. Have you had Cholula before?
I have.
You have. This is something that you're used to, probably.
It is.
Whoa. That one hat.
Told you, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Just calm it down. You got it. You got it. You got it. It's you. It's you.
That one has a lot of flavor. That one has.
Right off the tongue, right tip of the tongue. Taste buds.
That one has a lot more flavor.
I'll talk while you gather yourself.
Let me get some milk.
Thrown in the towel.
Yeah. All right. Wow. Whoa, that one hit me.
It's okay. It's okay.
That one hit me.
I mean, you made it halfway. You made it halfway through.
Let's just talk about faith.
Okay.
Faith on Broadway.
I tell people all the time, there are so many believers that are in the Broadway casts, and on shows. And one of the things, it's all good, take your time.
You're good.
One of the things that I love is that when you get into that scene, everyone says, live your truth, let your life be your life, love is love, all the things.
Yeah.
But what I also love is that understanding who we are and who we are grounded in. And there are so many believers that are stepping out and living on their faith. And it's a real faith that has been tested and stands the test in the midst of the fire of different things and different adversities. Because the reality is I grew up in Kentucky, which is like the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
People go to church just to check it off the box. They say, we go to church on Sundays. Okay, cool. And then sometimes it's just checking it off the box and that's all they do. And they're like, my relationship is just on Sundays for an hour.
Yep.
And it's like, man, if you went to school, like, would you go to a doctor that only went for an hour a week and studied? No, not at all.
Right.
And so the sense of just having a continual relationship and having that relationship tested happens quite often, just in general in living life on the road.
So good.
In the theater world.
I mean, do you find it as something that is your source of inspiration a lot as you're dealing with 2,000 shows? I mean,
yeah, you have to come from somewhere. And so even in talking through what I said before about it's somebody's first time and somebody's last time watching the show, like for me and cast members, we pray right before the show. That's one of the things that we process it with, but also we don't know what each performer's coming into the show with. And the audience doesn't care because they've paid hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands of dollars to make this trip happen for their family.
Yep.
And so where do we find our strength? Where do we find our inspiration? A lot of it's rooted in making sure that we are connected to the vine, making sure that we have the pulse on one another. And we do that in biblical community, making sure we're checking up on one another. Sometimes it's Bible studies here or conversations there or podcasts. A lot of the cast and me, there's probably at least 6 or 7 of us that go to church every Sunday before the show.
That's awesome.
And so just understanding and knowing like, man, we go to this worship set in Charlotte or we go to this worship set in Denver and then we go to the show and do that and making sure that we are connected to one another and having a pulse on where we are.
Golly. Are you able to turn it off when you're standing or you're in church and you're watching other people sing? Are you able to turn off the performance analytical part of your brain? It's
actually crazy. I think because we do it 8 shows a week, 6 days a week, it becomes like clockwork and we want to stay fresh and we want to stay relevant. So you stay present in the moment. And the same aspect when we get to the church, whether we are congregation members or whether we go and we're leading worship at that church, because that's what some of us did quite often is as we were touring around the country, it's, hey, I'm going to give your team a little reprieve and allow us to lead so that your team can then take in. And so walking through that is people are like, oh man, that worship pastor, he's just or the worship leader is just a performer. That's all he's doing, jumping around the stage. It's like, no, not really. Like if you think about what we do and why we do it, we do it to help usher in the spirit and also help set the tone for hearing the message, hearing the word. And so if we are laying the groundwork and the foundation to now hear the message and hear the word, it's never about us. It's always about, hey, let's make sure that your heart and your mind is right because we make sure our heart and our mind is right before we even start the service to then set the groundwork for you all, to then set the groundwork for the pastor that's bringing the message, to then hear the message, us to reflect after it with the worship, and then take out that joy and take out the inspiration that we've now learned in this body to spread to the world.
I love it. I feel you can feel your passion for ministry, which I want to ask a couple questions about in a second. Before that, I want to dive back to getting the role of Simba. I think we all know Simba. I feel like we all are connected to him from our childhood. When having to study and learn this role, were the things that you learned, or what was the most surprising aspect of having to be Simba? Whereas I'm like, I could be Simba. I know the songs. I know everything about Simba. I've watched the movie 100 times. But I'd imagine there's so much more to Simba that you probably had to learn. What are some of those things?
There is. I would say the biggest thing for me, and people talk about it all the time, and I would say my wife and I have the conversation about counseling and walking through life and struggles and situations, good and the bad. I would say the process of Simba, he deals and walks through so much turmoil that's not really talked about, but I have to feel, I have to embrace, and then I have to convey. And so you have to look at Simba when he comes on the scene for Hakuna Matata. It's like, oh, he's jovial and jumping around. And it's like end of act 1, and he swings on his vine and everybody's like, oh, I love him. It's great. But then you also then start act 2 and he's running around with Timon and Pumbaa. It's like, man, you're supposed to be eating these people, not hanging out with them as friends. So it's like, now you're being somebody that you're not supposed to be because you think that's what you're should be doing, and or you're running from something. How many of us in life have been like, no, God, I'm good. I'm just going to go over here. And then he's like, so what does he do? He sends Nala to smack him around.
She did.
It's the Holy Spirit, conviction. So many times it's like, man, you're not supposed to be here doing this. You're supposed to be a king over here. So we've already been entrusted with this whole title. We've been entrusted with all this power. However, we haven't tapped into the power, and we don't even know what we have really, or we know what we have, but we're trying to shy away from it because we think, oh man, I've gone too far. I've done this. I've done that. God, you can't use me because I'm not qualified in this manner or that manner. And he's like, no, I've placed this in you, even in spite of you trying to unlearn this by saying, nah, it means no worries. Oh, it doesn't care. I can hang around. What? No, like you're supposed to be the king here, and I'm going to bring you back by any means necessary. So I'm going to let you run off, do your own thing.
And there's no words, like that's all things that you have to just know about this character.
1,000%.
Convey to the audiences. You're right.
1,000%.
You're 100% right. Okay, we're going to try this next flavor here. I'm not excited about it.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if I'm going to do it with you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you are.
But it's going to be fire. And as you're doing that, I do kind of also want to know, did Broadway live up to what you imagined? So many people who would say, my only dream is to make it to Broadway. You've made it on one of the most successful musicals, if not the most successful musical. What would you say that it has lived up to what you imagine, or maybe some learning things that you've experienced?
First off, I'm going to tell you, if you notice the sauce, it's like thick. So just put it and dab it.
Yeah. This one already has. This one, you go ahead and talk.
Okay.
We're going to do this is just a slight. That's a lot hotter. Need the rest of the chicken out. I got to balance something out.
Bounce it up.
It's already flaming up in my mouth.
It's good.
All right.
I would say Broadway for itself, and explaining this to people, I think I have a different perspective than a lot of people. And I think because I started it later on in life. I went to college, wanted to be a high school band director, ended up leaving, joining the church full time, being a worship pastor for 16 years, and then from being a worship pastor, then joined Broadway. So it was 30 when I wanted to do Broadway, was 33 when I really started. I had lived a whole life before that. So my appreciation and my understanding for what I'm getting to do now is a whole different ballgame. So I look at Broadway as a beautiful thing. I'm a part of the national tour, doing that. And I did that for 5 years, and everyone's like, well, is Broadway better than the tour? I'm like, it's the same thing. You think of it as a basketball team. You have one team that plays all the home games, which is Broadway, and then you have us that played all the away games. Exact same team, they're just in 2 different locations. And so realizing and understanding what I get to do is cool, but that doesn't make me any better than anybody else. And realizing, man, so many people put you on this pedestal. How can we knock this thought process of like, I am better than you, or who I am is greater than anything that you can do is greater, and bring it back down to the same playing field. So I love going to schools, talking to kids. Man, I used to do this, and now I'm doing this. You can do the same thing. Walking into colleges that have people that are wanting to be on Broadway, talking to companies and just different people, having real conversations at church after worship, just to say like, yeah, what I'm doing is cool. Yeah, being Simba on Broadway, that's cool. That's awesome. But that's not all I do, and that's not all who I am.
Well, I think what I love about what you're saying, Darian, is you retired this character now of Simba, and now you're entering this next chapter, And I love that you are embracing ministry and really stepping into it wholeheartedly. So tell us a little bit about what that looks like for you.
Yes.
And was that a difficult decision?
It wasn't. So what people don't know is when I signed my last contract with Lion King, my wife and I had already decided that I have a 7-year-old boy now. And so this last contract was just walking through the season of life where we are, what the road has been for us has been a beautiful thing. It's been a blessing. The show's been a blessing, like the whole aspect. But now stepping into this next season of life with our family, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Does that look like being on the road full time? Does that look like being back in Kentucky? Does it look like being in New York and Kentucky? What does that look like? And so we process through the road life is not for us anymore. Not because it was bad, just because it's a new season. And so now we're stepping into theater is not done, but theater on the road is done for this season. So it's, do we live in New York? Do we live in Kentucky? Are we splitting both? Are we doing the same mindset of being in New York and being in Kentucky? And that's kind of where we've landed. And it's honestly, the moment that we started our life together has always been like open-handed. Okay, God, where do you want me? And our story has laid out in that manner, from having kids to career path, career choice, where we're living. And he has always been very, very clear. But also with that is, okay, God, we're open-handed. If I have 10 doors, I need you to close the doors that are not of you. And if there's 7 doors that close and 3 are open, you are, and we've kind of prayed and processed through this for us and our family. All right, God, if there's 3 doors, you're giving me the desires of my heart. You're just saying, pick one of the 3. All are God honoring because you've shut the doors that are not of you. And so like having a wife and a kid that can pray and process through those decisions together, it's like, okay, we feel comfortable about this to step forward in this.
So you've been singing songs that are iconic, and now you're in a chapter where you are ordained pastor. So you're beginning to write really what God is telling you to write. And you're also beginning to write songs. So tell us about the chapter now where it's like, I'm appreciative of what was created that I got a chance to be part of, but now I'm ready to create something fresh that is leaning more towards what God is whispering in my heart.
Yeah, I would say my heartbeat for what I do and who I am is to make God as real to any and everybody as possible.
That's good.
Knowing and understanding, living in the church and being in the church vocationally for so long, to then stepping out and being outside of the church and still serving in the church. I didn't leave the church. I just serving in a different capacity and realizing that people just want a real Jesus. And so I want to create music, create books, create stories, create conversations that are this real topic rather than this facade that people think Christianity is or the church is. Or to be completely honest, people are like, man, I got burned by the church. I hate the church. And I'm like, did you get burned by Jesus, or was it just somebody particularly that hurt you? And then you're putting that on the church or putting that on God.
A lot of times people's experiences, they just kind of say that represents the church. And a lot of times it takes a good friend stopping and saying, well, let's not just say all churches are this, but maybe your experience at a church was this. So let's acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Let's say, I want you to tell me how that fell. I want to really process that. But then say, maybe there's a church that if you're interested still, that might really fit what you're looking for.
1000%. And that's one of the things that I kind of gravitated towards, because people would say, man, I don't like Jesus, but I would go to your church. I'm like, I don't know about that. we could circle back around that. But if that's the beginning stage of where you
it's
are.
Honesty.
Cool. Yep. I'm good with that. So then we can then walk through like, man, if you would go to my church, cool, let's go to my church. So we go to Louisville, they come to my church. We go to Tucson, Arizona. They go to one of my best friend's churches down there. And they're like, man, this is not at all what I grew up in or at all what I thought church was going to be. Cool. So let's talk about what Jesus is, who he is. And there's no perfect church. And I'm not a perfect person. And so walking through this systematic approach and understanding, man, how do we be real, but also be relevant, but be real and relevant in the way of saying like, I don't have it all figured out. I'm still figuring it out. I may be ahead of you in the journey, but that doesn't mean that I'm better than you.
Right.
And figuring out that same playing field to have those open conversations.
That's so good. We got one left.
Okay.
Which means I'm going to give you one last question on this final one, because I probably won't make it much further. This is the Diablo. What a great name. What a great name. Thank you, Taco Bell. Okay, the last one is, we're talking about wonderment here in Dallas. And so when you hear the phrase wonderment, you think back on your journey or your story, what does it make you think? Did you like this flavor, by the way?
I did.
You did. Okay. Do you order Diablo when you go to Taco Bell? Do you go to Taco Bell on your 2-a-days?
I don't.
All right. Well, for the rest of us,
But my wife and my boy love Taco Bell.
who still get Dorito Locos tacos.
Occasionally get a chicken quesadilla if I do go, or if they go. Man, wonderment. Wonderment, I would say for me, sits in a spot of.
Oh my God.
All good. All good.
Go ahead.
I would say wonderment for me sits in a spot of wrapping one of my favorite scriptures, Ephesians 3:20. He's able to do immeasurably more than you could think, hope, or imagine. And I'm hoping that you're probably hoping that you get some reprieve right now.
I can't even hear what you're saying right now. I literally cannot hear what you're saying. I'm just nodding because right now my whole body's ready to shut down. It's so hot. Rewind me back just like 10 seconds. Because
The best is you
honestly,
are
when you touched me,
sweating right
when
now.
you touched me, I came back to James. I forgot you were even here. Okay. What did you say?
He's like, where are we?
What did you say?
The question was about wonderment, right?
Yes. Okay. Okay. Let me just center myself because that was something that does not get put in any bottle ever. So you go. I love it. As we think about that final question, what are your thoughts?
I'm sorry. It's the.
I'm trying not to cough.
Folks, this is real. It's real life right now.
Okay. All right. So with that one, so wonderment. Hit me. I'm back.
Okay, I'm good. We're good. I think about Ephesians 3:20. He's able to do immeasurably more than you could think, hope, or imagine.
Yeah.
And so we think about wonderment. We think about this bigger than big picture. We think about the God who created the universe, also created us as individuals. And one of the things that I know that I have been resting with and walking in, specifically the past 5 years that I've walked into the theater world, is I had somebody speak life into me. And a friend that I walked with many years before I went into the theater world, she just knew my heart, knew how I was as a worship leader. And she walked up to me and she said, Darian, as you walk into these rooms, there's no part of your body, your world, your life, your story that you are an arrogant person. But as you step into these rooms, as you step into these situations and you get put on these platforms and podiums and pedestals, you need to realize that you are authorized by God to be there. And as you walk in and as you speak, it's not in an arrogant manner, but it's with authority. And it's the authority that God gave you.
So true.
And so now as I walk into these rooms, as I walk in to do these different things, you know, I don't walk in to say, man, I'm the best worship leader that's going to walk on the stage. I'm the best musician. I'm the best Broadway performer. But I do say, for 3 years, God gave me the authority to be Simba. He gave me the authority to be the number one person in the number one musical in the world. And so because of that, I walk with that authority to say, hey, I have this platform and I have this podium that at this moment in time, I have the ability to speak into this kid's life because they want to know.
That's so true.
And I'm like, absolutely, I'm going to speak life into this kid. It may be the only time that I speak life into this kid, but maybe because of my platform that I have, they'll listen in a different manner. The same aspect for Jesus. And so it's like, man, every chance that I get, whenever I can get it, it's like, man, let me talk about Jesus. And how am I going to talk about Jesus? It's going to be different. Because I have some friends that are like, man, I love Jesus. Or they're like, man, I love the light that you bring. Oh, man, I love the energy. You just have this aura. I'm like, cool. You're talking about the Holy Spirit, but you can say light, say energy. I appreciate it. My energy that I'm giving off, absolutely. The Holy Spirit that's living inside of me is radiating to this fact that it is, I walk into the room and it shifts and does something. Cool. So I know the authority that I walk in. And so as I have this conversation, It's not a judgmental one. It's not a me trying to turn you. And I tell people all the time, if I can convince you to follow Jesus, somebody can convince you to fall out of love with Jesus. So my job is to pray for your heart. My job is for Jesus to grab a hold of your heart and shift it and change it.
Right.
When that happens, like I'm doing the thing by presenting him to you in the way that he has called me to.
Were you raised in the church?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You can feel it. There's a church kid in there. I love that. That's so good though.
Yeah.
I love what you're saying. So in the end, is there any song we should be aware of, or is there a way to stay connected to you in your journey?
Man, I would say Instagram _Darian Sanders _ or my website.
Darian Sanders _
Yeah.
Okay.
DarianSanders.com.
DarianSanders.com.
Yeah.
Thank you for hanging out with us in Dallas. Thank you for doing this Hot Ones Challenge. Looks like I beat you. And so, hey, maybe you'll beat me next time.
Come on.
Appreciate you, man.
Absolutely.
Till next time.